Stephen A. Smith addresses the courtside confrontation with LeBron James at the Lakers-Knicks game. Ladies and gentlemen, last night on Thursday, there was an altercation, a confrontation, some would say, between LeBron James and Stephen A. Smith courtside. Everyone saw it. Everyone's talking about it, so we will talk about it. We're going to talk about the actual confrontation itself. We'll talk about LeBron James / Bronny James. We'll talk about what this means for sports media moving forward. Let's go ahead and react with Stephen A. along the way.
That was LeBron James coming up to me, unexpected.
By the way, lip readers at the time said that LeBron was saying something to the tune of "keep my son's name out your mouth" or "keep my son out of it," something like that. So that was the paraphrasing, Twitter lip readers. That's what they thought happened. So Stephen A. Smith is going to confirm or deny.
Unexpectedly, I might add, to confront me about making sure that I mind what I say about his son. Can't repeat the words because they ain't suited for FCC airwaves. That's what he was doing. I thought long and hard about this over the last few hours because I had no intentions, Molly, of talking about this at all.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because it was a one-on-one, I wouldn't say a conversation, but it was a one-on-one confrontation. But then I wake up and everybody from ESPN and my agent and everybody else were sending me that this thing had gone viral. And so ultimately it was unavoidable, and that is why I have to discuss it now. That wasn't a basketball player confronting me. That was a parent. That was a father. And I can't sit here and be angry or feel slighted by LeBron James in any way in that regard. By all accounts, he's obviously a wonderful family man and a wonderful father who cares very, very deeply about his son. And based on some of the comments that he had heard, or shall I say, I think he thought he heard, he clearly took exception to some of the things that he heard me say, and he confronted me about it.
So Stephen A. and Skip Bayless they really kind of catapulted this current hot take kind of version of sports commentary. And, the embrace debate, what they did for a long time there, it was propped up on the idea of saying the hard things, saying something, not always the truth, but saying the hard things and not being afraid to call it like you see it, call somebody out, whatever. And we all remember the infamous Kwame Brown situation where Stephen A. called him a scrub. And that's fine whenever everything is isolated and everything is in its own bucket and it's in its own universe, right? You sit in the studio or you sit at your radio show or whatever, you make your commentary, you call it like you see it. That's it, right? You are a outside commentator. Now, because of how big the celebrity of Stephen A. Smith is, or even Skip Bayless to an extent, Stephen A. Smith is obviously much bigger right now. He's the biggest in this game. When you are the biggest in the game, but you're also working for ESPN, who has their tendrils in everything from the NFL, Monday Night Football, and ESPN or NBA coverage, and all of those things, the worlds start to merge, and that the ability to make the comments and kind of be impervious to reaction from the players goes away. I'll give you an example. Stephen A. Smith can sit there and say, okay, you got to talk about the NBA. All right. And he'll say what he has to say. This player's a scrub. That team sucks. This guy should be cut. This coach should be fired, whatever. He can sit there and say all that for hours every day. But then all of a sudden he's a captain at the NBA All-Star game, or he's picking a team in the All-Star game, or he's in the celebrity game, or he's courtside at whatever game. That's hard. That's difficult because now these players that he is going after in some situations, he's right there with them. And they're human beings. They're multimillionaires. They're alpha dogs. Of course, they're going to take slight with that. It's not like how it was a long time ago where commentators and columnists can say what they want, but they're insulated. They're in their bubble. Now they're rubbing shoulders. Okay, it's like if Roger Ebert was roasting movies and then he's handing out awards at the Oscars. It's like, well, this is kind of weird. Like the people he's roasting are right there. He's handing trophies to them. He's sitting next to them. Like this could be problematic.
For the record, his agent and friend Rich Paul has my number. Maverick Carter, who works under him, has my number. LeBron James knows how to get in contact with me if he wanted to.
Well, to be fair, he certainly did know, and that was walk up directly to you. I mean, it doesn't get more. If he wants to reach out to me, he can then walk up to you and stand in front of you and have a conversation with you in person. Now, it was, out of nowhere, an improv conversation courtside in a public setting, sure. But, I mean, LeBron James definitely took the linear route to getting in touch with him.
He never called, because had he called and wanted to talk to me, I would have accepted that call. Had he wanted to see me, I would have flown out and I would have seen him and I would have had a conversation man to man. But that is not what he elected to do. Instead, he elected to
again, you got to be kind of fair here to LeBron. He certainly did decide to have a conversation man to man.
Confront me while I was sitting courtside. Ari Emanuel, the head of William Morris Endeavor, one of the agencies that represents me, along with Larry David, was sitting courtside. I was with them for the game. And he walked right up to me and he said what he had to say. And apparently he feels like I was slighting his son. Now let me tell you what I feel. What I would have said if we were in a different environment, because I was not going to engage in a confrontation at that particular moment in that setting. But if we had had that conversation, I would have said to LeBron James, I never would speak negatively about your son. I was talking about you, meaning you, LeBron James.
I find it hard to believe that at some point Stephen A. did not say something like Bronny shouldn't be in the NBA, or Bronny, paraphrasing, Bronny sucks, or Bronny shouldn't be on a roster, or Bronny isn't worth a draft pick, or Bronny doesn't deserve to be in the NBA, all those kind of things, which are true. But I would also understand where LeBron took those as slights to his son. So I'd be surprised if Stephen A. didn't say anything similar to those anecdotes.
I have nothing but the best wishes for Bronny James. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope that he flourishes into an NBA star. Usually in other sports, we see all-stars, and on occasion, we'll see their children become stars as well. That doesn't really happen with the NBA. I sincerely hope he's the exception. By all accounts, he's a wonderful kid. And I don't know anybody who roots against him, and it certainly isn't me. But in the same breath, at the time that we were talking about him, he was percolating to such a degree that the Bronny James stories had gone viral. And so we had to talk about it. And when I said the things that I said, I wasn't talking about Bronny James because my attitude is he's a rookie. It's going to take some time for him to get himself together. He'll be just fine, especially with J.J. Redick and the staff coaching him. I was talking about the position that he was put in by his dad, because LeBron James has been on the record, and he has said, and I'll read the quote here. There was a quote that he gave in February of 2024. The work and results will ultimately do talking, no matter what the size. If y'all don't know, he doesn't care what mock drafts say. He just works, earned, not given, et cetera, et cetera. But he also had said that his son could play on the Lakers right now, and he was better than half the dudes in the NBA. In the aftermath of all of that, he instructed everybody before the draft that y'all want me, draft Bronny. Wherever Bronny is at, that's where I'll be. I'll do whatever it takes to play with my son for a year.
So real quick, the whole Bronny thing, yeah, like LeBron's put him in a horrible situation. Bronny is not an NBA player. He's not ready to play in the NBA. He certainly is not ready to play on the Los Angeles Lakers, who are contending for a title. They're the second. Right now, they're the 2 seed in the West. Luka Doncic is on the floor. LeBron James is playing at a super high level. This is prime time, right? This is batting cleanup for the Lakers. I mean, the Yankees. This is not the Charlotte Hornets. This is not the Washington Wizards, where you can go out there and do what you want, lose by 20. Who cares, all right? So Bronny's in a horrible situation. He also is in a situation where he's getting accused of, probably fairly, of being something like a nepo baby, where he's getting opportunities because of who his dad is, which is undoubtedly true. There's no doubt about it that he would not be in the NBA if it wasn't for LeBron James, okay? There's no doubt about it. The Los Angeles Lakers would not have drafted him if it wasn't for LeBron James. No doubt about it. On the same token, not surprised at all that a father would want to play in the NBA with his son. It is not surprising whatsoever that sharing the court in an NBA game is a dream of a father who's got a son that plays in the NBA. Whatever. The problem is, one, that LeBron is refusing to, or he's trying to defend it and saying that Bronny is standing on his own merit, and it just so happens to be that he's on the Lakers and they're playing together. That's the classic adage of, pissing on your head and saying it's raining. Like, we know what happened. We know that LeBron wants this special moment. He's created this special moment. We all saw it. It was cool. Congratulations. They celebrate as a family. Enough's enough. Like, you don't have to keep proving it to us. And the more you defend it, the more it's proving exactly what everyone's saying, that Bronny is just in a bad spot and LeBron is having to defend him at every turn, which he does. And in this situation is the same thing. The best thing for Bronny would be if LeBron said, you know what, we had our moment, we had our season, we had our this, whatever. It's now time for him to find his own way, and the Lakers should trade him. The Lakers should trade him to whoever. Trade him to the Cavaliers. Trade him to the Heat. If you want to still have a connection, fine. But it is never going to get better unless he can prove that he can stand on his own. If he gets traded to the Cavs, he gets traded to the Heat, comes off the bench, doesn't play, gets into the G League, whatever, that's still going to garner him more respect than what he's currently going through. This is not the first time LeBron and Bronny have done this. Bronny's real name is LeBron James. LeBron has said in the past that he regrets naming him LeBron James because it's hard for him to be his own person when his name is LeBron James. So he goes by Bronny. So it wouldn't be the first time that LeBron's kind of done a double take on putting either too much of his shadow on Bronny or too much pressure on Bronny. And I'll say this too, for Bronny, what a horrible situation. Like, you are not, imagine, take sports out of it, but imagine, like, your dad is the top stock trader at blank investment firm in New York. He's, the top guy. And you're fresh out of college, you've got C grades, and your dad promotes you to second in command. And you've got to go out there in front of the board and in front of everybody every single day and try and prove it, but you don't have the ability to do it. Having that spotlight on you nonstop, and you're in such a pressure-packed situation with so many people staring right at you with the easy way to determine if you're doing good or bad. In the finance world, it's profit. In Bronny's world, it's points, rebounds, assist numbers. And he's showing 0.3 this, 0.2 that, 0.1 this. So it's very easy to look at that and say, yeah, this guy's not an NBA player. But, so Bronny's in a horrible spot. LeBron needs to admit it. LeBron needs to allow him to go somewhere. I don't fault LeBron for wanting to have that moment with Bronny, but defending him is not helping.
It's not about the money at that point. My point months ago was that because of who you are, one of the top two players in the history of basketball, in my estimation, there's an immense amount of pressure that comes with that for his son. And when he talked like that and what have you, anything that goes awry as it pertains to his son, there's going to be a microscopic eye, even more intensified, on Bronny James because of his dad. And that's when I was talking about, come on, man, this is the situation that you're putting him in. That's where I was coming from. I could be a bit more outspoken about it, but to be quite honest with you, to be in that moment, to have LeBron look at me the way that he did, for me to be a father of two daughters, for me to know what fathers, how much love fathers have for their children, And to hear what he had to say, it was all about his son. It was almost as if he was saying, you know, you and I, because he and I don't necessarily vibe. It's high and by. We keep it moving. Neither of us lose sleep over it. And it's been that way for years. But it was like he was saying, keep that between me and you. Almost as if he was thinking that anything that I said about Bronny was a result of him.
It is kind of funny where it's like, hey, man, keep that between me and you. Okay, well, tomorrow I'm opening the show, and I'm doing 15 minutes on it.
And in that situation, again, I wasn't talking about Bronny. I was really, really talking about him because of the position that Bronny was in. But I really understood where he was coming from. He was very, very upset. I could tell. He could have called me. I'd have came to see him. I'd have had a conversation with him. He could have been just as upset face-to-face, man-to-man, as opposed to being courtside at the game. I had no idea that everybody saw it until I woke up this morning. But it is what it is. In the end, like I said, you know,
But that's kind of the blurring that I was talking about. You could flip it and say the exact same thing about Stephen A. Smith. Like LeBron could say, hey, man, instead of doing a 40-minute episode of your podcast that's going to get millions of views and going to live on the internet forever and get clipped and tweeted or whatever, you have my agent's number. You have this person's number. You have this. Call me. If you have something to say about how I'm handling the situation, just call me. Like, that's where the blurring is. Where should Stephen A. Smith have to do that? No. Right? Like, should a player have access to a commentator or a columnist to? Probably not. But in today's world of celebrity and social media and everything is accessible and everything is constant and everything is viral and everything is clipped and, you know, the players are closer than ever to everybody. You know, like, the more that those lines blur, the more that everyone's in the same swimming pool, like, the more we're going to see situations like this. And if you were to tell Stephen A. Smith, like, hey, man, you've got these guys' numbers, you know these guys, call them, talk to them. He would say, well, my job is to cover the NBA. My job is to commentate on these players. My job is to do this. You know, my job is to get ratings. My job is to be shocking at times or provocative at times. But to them, they don't care, right? Like, LeBron doesn't care if, you know, he doesn't care if that's your job, if it means he's the butt end of your jokes or the butt ends of the rants or the monologues or whatever. You know, so it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't, but it is tricky now because they are in the same world. You know, like, for me, it's a much smaller level, but we mostly cover the New Orleans Saints. When during 2 seasons ago, when the channel really started to take off, we were really gunning for, or really pushing this idea that Pete Carmichael should not be the offensive coordinator of the Saints, and he just should be fired. And, you know, almost every show we did was Pete Carmichael's a clown, Pete Carmichael should be fired, he's the worst offensive coordinator in the league, he doesn't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. If the Saints would have contacted me and said, hey, man, why don't you come to practice? Like, come to practice, do a video, hang out with the team, hang out with the staff, whatever, I would have said that that's kind of weird. You know, like, that kind of blurs where these are the people who I am commentating and trying to be impartial to. That would be a weird situation, you know? But for Stephen A. Smith, he gets a $100 million contract from ESPN. If ESPN says, hey, man, go to the NBA All-Star game, you're going to draft a team and you're going to play against Kevin Hart, he's going to draft a team and blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, you're going to do what you're going to do, right? So the lines have been blurred in sports commentary for sure.
As a father, I get it. I'm not offended. I'm not insulted. I don't have any animosity or animus towards LeBron James for this. Nothing like that. I don't think he cares, but neither do I. I'm just stating fact. None of that exists. If I was in his position, I can't definitively say I would not have done the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming him one bit. I get it. I understand it. And there's a part of me that aches and hurts because of it. But unlike a whole bunch of people, with their podcast and beyond that talk about the NBA. I covered the NBA. And it's my job to talk about the subjects and the subject matters that matter. I work for ESPN. I'm here. We have the #1 morning show for the last 13 years and counting. God has blessed us with that. There's a lot that's going on, and there's a lot of stories that are there to be told. And I just feel it's necessary to remind people, Molly, I was raised as a journalist. Let's be very, very clear about what that means.
Well, okay, so this again goes to what I'm saying is that like the old journalism, and remember, guys, I worked for a Pulitzer Prize-winning newspaper, covered crime. The old school journalism does not vibe with now. When I first became a reporter, my editor told me good reporters take themselves out of the story. He told me the goal is to write about the story, get the reader there, get the reader as close as they can to the story, but remove yourself. You never want to say I. You never want to say me. You never say I thought this or I think that. That is the opposite of what it is now. Now, it's all the individual. You want to be the story. You want to be the face of the story. You want to be the person that people go to because they trust or whatever. Like, so even journalism has shifted away from here's what happened to here's what I think about what happened. Those are two very different things. Now, a columnist, stuff like that, that's a little different. Like that, you know, that was like you're getting paid for your opinion. But, you know, Stephen A., like I know a lot of food critics who they remain anonymous because they don't want the chefs to know when they go in the restaurant. It makes total sense, right? But if you're a food critic and you are the face of food, you know, food critiques, and you are the face of food, and you are the biggest, are you the Stephen A. Smith of food, whatever, and you are blasting Gordon Ramsay's restaurants and just ripping them, and then you roll up in his restaurant and he's there, Gordon Ramsay's going to pop off, right? Even though it's your job, even though you're a food critic. But if your job is a food critic, should you be, one, in the public eye as much, and two, should you be going and eating at that restaurant after you just blasted it? You know, like, probably not. But in today's day and age, it's the name of the game.
I'm not one of those that get into people's private affairs. But what you do on a public platform for public consumption, that's what I cover. That's what I do for a living. And if you're in the NBA, that applies to you. I don't want enemies. I live a very good life. I like to make people laugh and smile and have a good time and all of that other stuff. But I also get paid to call it like I see it. And what I said at the time, I stand by what I said. It wasn't even any reporting. The facts were out there. And what I was saying about LeBron is fact-based because of what he said and the things that he said leading up to his son getting drafted and ultimately being in the NBA on the same team as him, as opposed to being a Boston Celtic or a Golden State Warrior. Mm-hmm. There is no way around that. And when you are born and raised as a journalist, not born and raised, but when you're raised as a journalist professionally, you don't want enemies, but you ain't paid to make friends. Mm-hmm. You got to call it like you see it. And that's what I did. So again, in closing, I just want to say, I'm not upset. I don't care. I wish that it wasn't in that kind of atmosphere. I wish it was in a private setting.
Yep.
I don't blame LeBron James for being upset. I don't blame him for being angry. I don't blame him for wanting to confront me because that wasn't a superstar basketball player that confronted me. He played like one again last night, which just reminds you of his focus and his greatness.
By the way, Lakers 13-1 to win the finals. I've got a ticket, so go Lakers.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a basketball player that approached me last night.
Let's get
that was a daddy.
What happened in the court. And Stephen A., I appreciate you putting yourself in his shoes, and I'm glad that LeBron got to address what's on his heart as well.
I think I think honestly, this is about as good as it could have went. Where if you are going to be both criticizing and in the public eye at this level, I think it's totally fine for LeBron or anyone else to say, "Hey, I've got a problem with this. I got a problem with what you said." I think that's totally fine. Now, obviously, I don't think it should ever come to blows or anything like that. Like, obviously, that's way too much. And when I was a journalist, we used to get that all the time. When I was a newspaper reporter, we used to get people call up or come to the newspaper building or write us or whatever, and want to talk about what was written or what was said or whatever. Like that. That's fine. It should be a two-way street, no doubt about it. But the more that those lines are blurred, and ESPN is a really unique platform because it hosts these shows, but it also hosts the league and the players that the shows are about. They're all in the same multiverse. Like ESPN has contracts with the NBA. They've done sit-down interviews with LeBron. It's all intertwined. They're all under the same umbrella. So that makes it a little more unique than if Stephen A. Smith worked for Barstool or a totally independent group with the NBA. But interesting stuff. It's always fun to talk about journalism and media in general. But let me know what you thought about this. Who do you think's in the right and the wrong? Do you think anyone's in the right or anyone's in the wrong? Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.